Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy Dog here, and today I am bringing you the Blitz Survival Games Guilds tier list. Now, this tiering system is going to be based on a lot of things. It's going to be based on the roster of the guild, how the guild influenced other guilds after it or before it or anything like that, and what the guild really did for and or to the game, and also how long the guild lasted in general and just how much it's talked about today. So we're going to cover all those bases, or try my best to, in this video. So let's get started. In the bottom of F tier, we have Dog 9. Dog 9 was made by Stardark 9 in the middle of 2014, and it lasted all the way until the middle of 2015. This guild was basically comprised of all of Stardark's subscribers on YouTube, because his YouTube channel was very big for Blitz standards back then, and it really wasn't that much of a Blitz guild. It was just the fact that they all played Blitz because of his channel, and that's why this guild is going to be very low on this list. This guild didn't really do too much for the game, considering they teamed a lot in solo back then, because that was allowed, and they were basically the reason that the rule got added, no teaming in solo. So they influenced the game, but definitely not in a good way. So right behind, or right in front of Dog 9, we have On Cloud 9. So On Cloud 9 was an iteration of Off the Scene that was created because Off the Scene kind of died out, and On Cloud 9 was basically like, what rose from the ashes. This guild was made by CCL HD in the middle of 2015, and it lasted all the way until late 2015. And the roster was actually really strong, but really small, and the lifespan of the guild was only a couple of months before a bunch of stupid drama ensued, and the guild ended up getting disbanded. Wow, I can't talk that well, but I'm just gonna keep going. But yeah, so this guild didn't really do all that much in the game. It wasn't really that known. Everyone knew that CCLHD made another guild, but no one really paid attention to it like they did with Off the Scene. Alright, so right in front of On Cloud 9, we have Wapple. So I actually don't know much about this guild, and I had to get a lot of information on this guild from multiple people that played back then. But this guild was created by VS Tercy, who was one of the first Blitz leaderboard players back when it was no signs for the leaderboard. It wasn't a hologram. It was an iron block, a gold block, and a diamond block. And this guild, I would assume, lasted throughout 2014, because VS Tercy ended up getting stats wiped in early 2015, I believe. So I'm assuming this guild just kind of lasted throughout 2014. If I didn't hear of this guild at any given moment in my entire time in Blitz, then honestly it must have not been that great of a guild. I've literally never heard of this guild until someone mentioned it to me, or Julian mentioned it to me. Alright, so moving up to E tier, we've got 305. So 305 was the product of Hyperbole and Nazir combining Lamron and 5. This guild only lasted for a single month, I think even less than that, maybe a couple of weeks. This guild was just a total mess. The transition from, the whole conversion of the guilds, or combination of the guilds, was just absolutely horrid. I was there and I witnessed every single day of them trying to get this shit together. It never worked, not even once. It was a terrible guild, and the only reason I'm putting it above the 3 on the bottom tier is because it was a little organized, like for half of a second there, and it was very known, and it did have one of the best rosters at that time. It was just so sloppy, and it just did not last that long, and wow. This was probably just the biggest abortion of Blitz guilds of all time, basically, was this guild. Meme Machine. Where is Meme Machine? There we go. Meme Machine. So Meme Machine is owned by Malicious 3, and it is a guild that was originally filled with close friends of Malicious, but it kind of branched out and becoming a very decently sized Blitz guild. It had like maybe 40 to 50 members, which, usually guilds, the cap is 125, so you'd figure all these Blitz guilds on this list, almost every single one of them had a maxed guild roster. It had a really, really strong roster. It had a lot of really old players, but the fact that it was kind of just originally for close friends kind of brings it down a lot, and the fact that it died out so fast after it did give it a shot at being an actual guild is why I've put it lower on this list. Late 2015 to early 2017 is how long this guild actually lasted. All right, moving on. Magic. So Magic is a guild that I actually have personal experience with, seeing as I killed it. I literally killed Magic to create proximity. And Magic was the product of Shattered Chaos being disbanded by Gamebuster 101 in early 2015, I believe. The skill was created by Snowskater, and it lasted from mid 2015 to early 2016. And honestly, the roster was actually really amazing. But the fact that it was killed off so fast kind of brought it down a lot in the tiering. And another thing that actually brings it down is Psychosis and Shattered Chaos were just so much better than Magic. And it had such a large name to live up to, like such huge shoes to fill, you know? I feel like the commentary for this is not at its peak. I'm very tired. I worked on this for a long time. Creating this tier list and getting the dates and information for this list, it was just so incredibly difficult. You just have no idea. So, I mean, I'm just trying to be informative here and just tier these as best I can. Honestly, the lower tiers are going to be kind of boring. I don't have much to say about them because they're just really that bad. But anyway, we're moving on to D tier now, so it'll get pretty interesting around now. AYS is going to be at the bottom of D tier, and that is because, well, actually, I didn't actually finish talking about Magic. Magic ended up dying because Snowskater ended up being banned, which means that the whole entire guild was carried by the leader. A lot of the guilds on this list in S, A, B, and C were guilds that were either transferred to someone else. It's just they lasted for a long time for many, many, many reasons, and Magic died because of the owner getting banned, which I feel was pretty anticlimactic. Like, no one even tried to revive this guild. I had to take people out of the guild and make an entirely new iteration of my own thing. Anyway, so starting D tier, we've got AYS. So I put AYS on this list. I know a lot of you are like, oh, why are you putting AYS on this list? Well, one of the reasons is because it housed Technoblade in this guild, and Technoblade was probably one of, if not the most known Blitz player at the time. He was definitely one of the most known. And it had a lot of very good server-wide players in it, and that's what pretty much AYS came to be, and it ended up being Foundation later on. But anyway, when you saw an AYS member in your game, you were like, oh shit, I'm probably going to lose this game, because they were just very good at Hypixel in general. The guild was originally made because of, and it stands for Anti-Yellow Society, and it was made because Yellow Team and Megawall started off at a disposition compared to all the other teams. It had a disadvantage, and they wanted to prove that wrong, so they would always queue Yellow Team every single game, and that is what the guild was for. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. It might have been they queued other colored teams. But anyways, yeah, that's why it's on this list. This guild lasted from early 2014 to the middle of 2016, and it was created by Kevos. Yeah, I think the owners swapped a lot in that guild. Anyways, next up we've got Lunix. So this was another guild that a lot of people told me to put on this list, and by a lot I mean like 4. I mean, let's be honest, in Blitz that's a lot, okay? If like 4 to 10 people are talking about something, that's enough. Lunix was created by Richley, who was like the first pay-to-win Blitz player when it came to boosters. He had like Speleologist 10 with 2k kills, which back then that was crazy. Like my first level 10, I got it at like 18k kills. This guild wasn't really that strong, but I do remember that he actually owned a guild, and that's why I'm not really putting it higher than D. I do remember that it was pretty decent, like the roster was alright, and it was owned by a pretty infamous player at the time, so it did earn its merit in that. But the guild lasted from early 2015 to late 2015. Let's see. Oh, Lumios. This one's a personal one. This one was created by yours truly. I made this guild after Proximity was disbanded. This was my second guild that I ever had and the last guild that I ever owned. I created it in early 2017, and it lasted until the middle of 2017. The reason that it is this low is because the age of the guild was very, very small. I think it lasted for about 4 months before it kind of crumbled into what Proximity was, which was just a dysfunctional guild altogether, or not even dysfunctional. It was just kind of like chaotic in a sense. But yeah, Lumios had a pretty all-right roster. It was basically half of what Proximity was. Proximity had a full-blown 125 roster. Lumios only had about 55 to 60, I recall. And it was pretty inactive at that point, and it ended up just being disbanded again. I ended up like kicking everybody out of it or whatever. But yeah, it was a pretty bad guild. It's like my biggest mistake is remaking Proximity, basically. All right, ahead of Lumios, we have Gooch Gang. All right, this one's a personal one because, you know, I used to hate Gooch Gang. Gooch Gang is a guild that existed in late 2019 to now, so pretty much it's a pretty new guild. I think it was made in like August, and it exists today. This was the first guild, or this is the first guild on the list that is still active today, so that's pretty interesting. It was created by Dosa, and the premise of Gooch Gang was basically to break the rules of Blitz. I have a video on my channel about it and everything where I basically make fun of the premise of their guild and what it was for. What they do is they get in these parties, these giant parties, and they would team in solo like Stardark used to do with Dog9 back in early 2015. And it pissed off a lot of people. It pissed off a lot of people. Like dozens of people would try to report them and nothing would really be done. And after a while, they cut the shit out and they stopped doing the teaming gag, and they ended up making a pretty actually all right guild. That's pretty much it. That's all I can really say about Gooch Gang. All right, Blazing Star. Blazing Star was created by Toxic Plays Blitz, and it lasted from the middle of 2017 to the end of 2018. I don't know if that date is actually correct, but I'm sure Julian will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure he'll want to watch this video. But anyways, Blazing Star was the product of Crit Squad being... not even being disbanded, but Majestic Walrus ended up kicking everyone out of his last iteration of Crit Squad in late 2018, and Julian decided to go off and make his own guild. I know these dates aren't really adding up. I'm pretty sure I'm wrong about these dates, but anyway, Majestic Walrus's last iteration of Crit Squad ended, and Julian decided to go off and make his own guild, and he named it Blazing Star. The reason I put this guild in this tier is because it was very chaotic. It was really never orderly. It wasn't really like a public Blitz guild. It was full of a bunch of people that knew each other. We would get in voice chats every day, and it was pretty much the same like 20 people that were active in the guild, and the rest of like the 90 people that were in the guild were just like completely random people. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I was in this guild for a long time. I was an officer, and this guild was just like, it was basically like Lumios. It was basically a carbon copy of what Lumios was, except for it was at a larger scale, basically. All right, so moving on, we've got Team Snipe. Team Snipe was another guild that was suggested. Where the fuck is it? Okay, so we got Team... Oh, my God. So we've got Team Snipe. This guild was created by the Just 219, and it lasted from the middle of 2014 to the middle of 2015. And this guild, I don't really remember it being a thing. I just remember the Just 219 owning his own server that had kit PvP on it that I played on a lot. I don't recall him ever owning a guild, and that's why I'm going to put it on this tier, because like I said, if I can't remember that it existed in the first place, I'm sure it wasn't all that great. I mean, in the back of my head, I can kind of faintly remember that he owned a guild, and the dates that I gave are just a generalized kind of area of when the Just was active, but I do recall, well, not I don't recall, but I can say that if he owned a guild, then it definitely died right when he quit, which doesn't give the guild much merit. It didn't really change anything in the game. Honestly, we're not going to see any like game-changing guilds up until like maybe B tier. That's when we'll start seeing guilds that really change the game and what guilds mean today. So starting C tier, let's go. We've got the Incredibles. So the Incredibles is a team mode based guild owned by Johnful. This guild was full of just packed with team mode players, and it was created in late 2016 and it lasted until late 2018. The guild still exists today, but it definitely was most active in those 2 years there. Now it's pretty much just like, I think the guild is based, I think 19 people are in it, and honestly, I just can't say that it's really active today, so I can't say like late 2016 to present. But yeah, this guild was really dominant in its day. It basically was the team mode guild after Intoxicated, and it was after Intoxicated in 5, basically, it was the big team mode guild that you had to join if you wanted to have a lot of teammates around you at any given moment. Pretty much it. It's a pretty basic guild. But yeah, it's always big to have a team mode guild in the game. It really like shakes things up. So this was the third and last big team mode guild that was pretty much like based around team mode specifically. So up next we've got 123 Squad. Now this is the first guild on this list that actually like changed the game socially. And basically the rules of this guild were, if you joined, I could be wrong, but I think this was an actual rule. If you joined the guild, you had to change your name to 123 something. Like it had to be something. Maybe a part of your last username you had. But this guild was packed with 123s. Like, holy shit. There was like 50 people named 123 something, and they would constantly play, constantly. And this guild was actually pretty positive. Like, it was a positive force in the Blitz community. I was annoyed by it because I thought it was cringy that they named themselves like different things, but it really did change the game socially, and it made a guild that was like really, really close. It was like basically a giant fucking family. It's basically like, yeah, it's like instead of a last name, it was like a first name added on if you were a part of the family. It was a really huge guild. It was owned by 123 boys, and it lasted mid 2015 to early 2017, I believe. I do recall it lasting for quite a while. All right, up next we have Zone. Zone was owned by SlyPro 10, and it lasted from 2016 or late 2016 to late 2017. This guild was actually had a pretty fucking strong roster. It had a lot of the foreign players in it. Like, this was the first guild where it was a giant congregation of pretty much all foreign players. Like, there were French players in the guild, there were Dutch players in the guild. Most guilds prior to this were mostly North American players with the occasional foreign player, but this was the first guild where it was like, all right, let's get all of the foreign people together and let's make a big guild. All right, cool. So I think this guild is actually, it was really good. Like, the roster was amazing, and it did shape the game in the sense of like it was the first guild where it was basically exclusively for people that weren't North American. I can't even remember if there was a North American person in the guild. It did die after SlyPro kind of became less active, though. Actually, I think it died on its own. I don't think it died because SlyPro was, less active. I think SlyPro was always active in that time. I think it just kind of died off. All right. Ahead of Zone, we have Next Generation. Now, I'm sure some of you viewing will definitely know this one. This is one of the guilds of 2019. Now, this date could be wrong, but I believe this guild was made or active from early 2019 to late 2019. This guild was created by iGPU, or the last owner of iGPU, known as Jacob, and it was a really, really, really solid guild. It was basically, the big foreign guild at the time. It was packed with Dutch people, Czech Republic, French, Italian. I'm just kidding. But it was full of a lot of people that were not North American. There were a lot of dominant North American guilds at the time, and iGPU basically just woke up and he was like, you know what? I'm going to make one of the highest progressive, most progressive guilds of all time. This guild made such a huge leap from like being nothing to being something that it was actually quite crazy. The guild died, though, around the time iGPU decided to quit at the end of this year, or very recently. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about the guild there. Ahead of Next Generation, we have Drops. Drops was created by Sweatily Clicking, and it is actually still active to this day. It has a very solid roster, but it does have a lot of random people in it. And it didn't really influence the game, and Drops basically became... Sweatily Clicking was actually in Proximity and Lumios, and after... I don't think he was in Lumios, he was in Proximity. And after Proximity disbanded, he created Drops. And Drops was actually really solid. It's kind of shaped the community in many different ways. It's hosted, I think, a multitude of Blitz tournaments, or I think one. And this is actually huge because, Blitz has never seen anything like that with like tournaments with prize pools or anything like that. So it was pretty huge that they did that. But like I said, the roster is pretty mediocre. Like, it has some pretty good additions, but overall it's full of a good bit of random people for no reason, and it is kind of a slightly inactive guild. It's pretty much just the same 10 people grinding. But yeah, so that's all I got to say about Drops. I'm going to be saying that a lot. Like, I'm not going to say take a shot every time I say that, but, definitely, if you're eating something, take a bite, no matter how hot it is. Just go ahead, just do it. Something like that. I don't fucking know. I'm just saying that so much. I feel like, oh yeah, and up next, or I'm saying like the same three things over and over. All right, so ahead of drops, we have Team Extreme. So Team Extreme is the guild created by Diamond Tool, and this was actually really big because this was the first guild and the only guild of all time, I believe. Or no, there were two. This was one of two guilds created by a moderator of the Hypixel staff team. And a lot of people were very questionable towards this guild because of that, because there's always been this like layer of distrust with staff members, but I think Diamond Tool ran this guild very well. I didn't have much interaction with it, and I had to be reminded that it even existed in the first place, but I do recall it being a very solid guild, and I even looked around and I found a thread with the roster of it, I believe. I don't know if this was like accurate, but it did have a lot of known names on it. This guild lasted from late 2014 to early 2017, I believe. I don't know if that last date is correct. It might have been late 2016, but this guild did last for quite a while. All right, so at the top of C tier, we have Anarchy. This guild was created by Speed Silver and it lasted until early 2015 to mid 2016. Those are the replies that I saw on the thread that he was still responding to. I went on the thread and did pretty deep research into this. I saw the roster, and it was actually really solid. It had a lot of level 10s, like OG level 10 owners at the time. And it was definitely one of the top Blitz guilds of its day. I don't know if the time that I gave is accurate, but yeah, it was definitely very, very, very big. And yeah, that's about it. I think it died when Speed Silver decided to go to UHC. I think he disbanded it or remade it or something like that. Yeah, that's about it. Moving on to B tier. This is like the big tier. This is when guilds start getting like big. So at the bottom of B tier, we have the 5 Guild. So the 5 Guild probably shaped Blitz the most in the sense of like a very, very strict rule set kind of guild where it took the concept of a guild to the next level. And when I mean guild, I mean like intense, passionate players when it came to the concept of guilds, pretty much. And the reason I say this is because Hyperbole ran the guild in a way where like it was kind of like a cult almost, where like it's just this very, very, not even small, it was a gigantic guild. It's a very, very small group of people. Why am I saying small? Wait, whoa. Stop saying small. It was a very, very, very huge group of people. It's had probably like 400 to 500 unique Blitz players over the span of 4 years. Oh, did I forget to mention that this guild has existed from early 2015 to late 2019? Yeah, this is one of the longest existing Blitz guilds that was like active over that time in existence. It's had multiple iterations, all under the same name called 5, and every single game, these players were so set on saying #5. It was crazy. It just took the concept of like a professional guild or like a competitive guild to the next level. This is probably the most competitive Blitz guild of all fucking time. The only reason I don't put it higher, though, is because this guild was extremely infamous, and they were known for doing pretty scummy things like, teaming in Teams mode, and they pretty much, like, demolished Teams mode for a long time, and not in a good way. And a lot of people were bothered by the whole #5 thing, but I got to give it to them for dedication. I'm not going to put them any lower than B. I refuse. All right, so Fading Echoes. Fading Echoes is the second guild created by Toxic Plays Blitz, and it was active from the middle of 2018, and it is still active to this day. It is statistically the #1 Blitz guild currently, I believe. I think it's like the highest level Blitz guild, and it has a really, really fucking strong roster. It has a lot of inactives, though, so that's why it's not going to go on A or S tier. Fading Echoes is actually Crit Squad. Crit Squad was created by Majestic Walrus, and Crit Squad, he gave it to Julian to own, and yeah, that's about it. It's still the same as Crit Squad. Hardstyles actually ended up owning this guild at some point. This guild has gone through a lot of rough patches, and I've had a lot of personal experience with this guild, and it has gone through a lot of rough patches. But, recently it's smoothed things out, and it's become a pretty decent guild. I'm not going to say it's like the best of the newer guilds, but it is all right to join. It's okay. So ahead of Fading Echoes, we have Intoxicated. And the reason that I'm putting Intoxicated this high for it being so short-lived is because it was unprecedented how big this guild was. This guild was owned by Mouse Mickey, who was the original #1 team's leaderboard player. He was like the big teams guy. He had like 6.5k team wins a couple of years ago, like in 2015 when it first released. He was one of the best grinders in the game, and he wanted to make a guild based around grinding teams mode and basically thriving off of teams. This was the first guild created with that kind of curveball to it. It lasted from late 2015 to late 2016, and it was just unprecedented, like how big this guild was. It was a totally maxed out guild, and it was one of the biggest guilds at the time. Like, the stats for the guild were just so high. Back then, you could see guild stats on Hypixel's forums, and the kills were like, I think it was like 2 million or something crazy. It was fucking insane. Crazy guild. And it basically set the road for like, or it set the pave work for like team mode guilds that came after it in the future. All right, let's see. Ahead of Intoxicated, we have Lamron. So Lamron was the basically the second to last like foreign-based guild where it was full of a lot of people that were not from the North American region. And the reason I say foreign is because like Hypixel is a North American server. So if you aren't North American, you are technically a foreign user to that server. Like, that's why you get high ping if you're not, you know, North American. I mean, you kind of get decently high ping if you're like in certain regions of Canada or Mexico, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't get like 200 MS or 150 MS. You get like 110 or something. But anyways, Lamron was a gigantic guild. I think it was the second best statistically out of all the guilds that are like active this year. It's had about 2 or 3 iterations, and it's had some bumps in the road, but generally the roster was astounding. It had any given foreign player that you could name off the top of your head with high stats. It had them in that roster right away. Very active guild. It just, oh wow, just the grinding from this guild. I remember that they actually took over monthly leaderboard once. For the first like week of, I think it was like some month in the summer of this year, every single one of them, the tag of their guild was 300. Every single monthly kills person was 300. It was just insane. Crazy guild, very good. Moving on to Proximity. Proximity was my guild. This was my first ever guild. It was originally created by PRXZ, and he transferred ownership over to me, and I owned it for pretty much its entire existence. The guild lasted from late 2015 to early 2017, and honestly, the guild was just unprecedented. It was basically out of the 2015 guilds, being Intoxicated, 5, Proximity, guilds like that, it definitely had the strongest roster. I had so many players from 2013, 2014, and 2015 in my guild. And it basically combined the old gens of Blitz with the new gens of Blitz at the time. And it lasted for a long time, and the guild's roster stayed consistent. And I kept that shit consistent. Like, if someone left the guild, I would get someone in, or I would get that person back. I was on that shit, okay? And fun fact about this guild, and the reason I put it so high, is because I basically created, like, the culture of killing guilds in Blitz. Not a lot of people know this. It kind of like got lost in history or whatever, but I was pretty much the first person to capitalize on guilds dying and taking their members away. In Blitz anyway. I'm sure that was a thing before, like with other guilds, like, hey, join mine. But in Blitz, I was the first person to do something like that. Off the scene, Shattered Chaos and Crit Squad were all dying at the time. So I decided to take every single member of their guild and create my guild. And it started off just insanely strong, and it stayed strong up until it was disbanded in late 2017, or early 2017, sorry. But yeah, sorry, not Shattered Chaos. I took members from Magic, yeah. All right, so this is moving on to A tier. These are the guilds that actually shaped the game so hard that it's pretty much, it's just fucking insane how much they did. These are the guilds that basically shaped what we know today, and the mannerisms of Blitz guilds are based around these 5 guilds. These 5 guilds are the legendary guilds, and everything we know about Blitz guilds, applications, stat requirements, threads, everything, Discords, team speaks, everything we ever knew about this stuff came from these guilds. The mannerisms that were created just came from these guilds. So, in A tier, we have Psychosis. Psychosis was the first iteration of Magic and Shattered Chaos, and it was owned by YQT1001. I could be wrong. I think it was co-owned by like 3 people. It was started in early 2014 when guilds were released, and it's lasted until early 2014. Now, the reason I put it so high on this list is because it was pretty much the first Blitz guild to capitalize on the fact Team Rec didn't exist anymore, I believe. Or not even like Team Rec. It was like the first Blitz guild to really set up that like, okay, let's do this like whole official thing. Honestly, like I'm explaining this very badly, I think. Psychosis was just a legendary guild. I don't know how else to explain it. Fuck. I guess that's why it's at the bottom of A tier. It was a legendary guild, and it was one of the greats. It was one of the first. It was pretty much the baby steps towards Shattered Chaos. But the roster, I believe, was just astounding, but it didn't last very long. Fuck, I explained that so badly, and I'm very disappointed with that one. I don't know. I didn't know much about Psychosis. That's how early it was. It was before my time. I don't know. So ahead of Psychosis, we have Team Rec. Team Rec was literally the first Blitz guild where it was like the person was like, all right, this is a Blitz guild. It was owned by King Steve, and I have no fucking idea when this guild existed and when this guild ended. That's how early on this guild existed. Like the first day guilds were created, King Steve was like, all right, I'm going to make a Blitz guild and I'm going to make it great. Majestic Walrus speaks very highly of this guild, and he says that it was one of the best Blitz guilds in history, like ever. It set up what we know about guilds today, where like there was a whole system. There were like ranks in the guild and stuff, I think, even. And it was just a very like, it set up the first like competitive feel to Blitz. It's like, holy shit, you know, you can make this a thing. You can make these factions and shit of people. And it basically spawned the 3 guilds that I'm going to be putting next, you know, ahead of Team Rec. So Off the Scene. Off the Scene was created by CCLHD, and it lasted from early 2014 to the middle of 2015. And Off the Scene was pretty much one of the 3 great Blitz guilds of 2014 and 2015, or early 2015. And honestly, it was just, it had the biggest roster when it came to like casual players that had a lot of stats. That's pretty much what the guild was known for. It was full of people that played casually but had insane fucking stats. It had like pretty much, out of the 3 guilds that are top 3 on this list, so Off the Scene, Shattered Chaos, and Crit Squad, you have like, it had the least stats of the 3, but it did have a fucking crazy roster, and it had a bunch of like top 20 players in it, or like top like 30. It's a crazy guild, very, very, very fucking known, and it created what I like to think of as like the casual Blitz guild effect, where like it's pretty much just a bunch of friends. It has that casual feel to it. And I feel like Team Rec created like 3 different iterations of what we know today. So Off the Scene is pretty much the 1/3 of that section where it's like the social kind of guild. So that's what Off the Scene was, and it was like the granddaddy of social guilds that were actually good statistically. Moving on to S tier. These are the legendary guilds. They are talked about to this day every single time I'm in a call. Like, someone references them. So many people know these guilds. So many people love these guilds. So many people have so many great memories of these guilds, and they just dominated Blitz in their day, and they dominated Blitz many, many, many years afterward in different iterations of themselves. Every single guild that exists today was inspired by aspects of these guilds, and honestly, like, they're just legends. These guilds are legendary. So in second, we have Shattered Chaos. Shattered Chaos was created and owned by YQT 1001, but it was also co-owned by GameBuster 101 and Quasar. This guild was basically the first super hyper elitist guild in the sense of you had to be in their close circle, but they also managed to be an amazing guild. Like, somehow they were just one of the best guilds of all time, even while having that strict requirement of, if we like you, you can join. There is no such thing as an application system for this guild. This guild was just honestly astounding. Everybody wanted to be in this guild. It was either you wanted to be in Shattered Chaos or you wanted to be in Crit Squad. And if you couldn't be in those 2, you had to be in Off the Scene. That's literally how it worked, and that's why I remember that so well. I had to actually join Off the Scene at some point because I couldn't get in either of these 2 guilds. Shattered Chaos was just amazing, and it had this really elitist effect to it, and that was the first time people realized in Blitz that you could have this ego. Like, you could be this elitist person that was pretty much just an asshole. Like, the guild was filled with assholes, but it was filled with legendary assholes. That's why it's an S tier. Fucking guaranteed S tier. So in number 1, we have Crit Squad. Crit Squad was created by Majestic Walrus, and it was created in early 2014, and it lasted all the way until late 2018. So it actually ties for one of the oldest, most active Blitz guilds of all time with 5. And this guild is just legendary. This guild pretty much introduced the whole, you have to apply and have this certain amount of stats to join this guild, and it introduced a kind of hierarchy system. It was like a social hierarchy. It was like ranks. Like if you go and look up Crit Squad, Majestic Walrus in your Google search bar, you will see like 7 different threads created by Mason throughout the years, and this guild had like 10 different iterations. Every single one kicked total ass in its time, and I just can't stress that enough. I'm not saying this because Majestic Walrus or Mason is like one of my best friends. I'm saying this because Crit Squad was literally just the best Blitz guild of all time, hands down. If you go on the original Crit Squad thread, you'll see that it had pretty much every single leaderboard player at the time, and it had every single high stat player that you could even name off of the top of your head. Every single known player that even mattered and didn't want to be in Shattered Chaos, a part of that elitist garbage, like to them anyway, it was garbage, they joined Crit Squad. And every single time Crit Squad came back as a new iteration, it just kicked total ass. It had some of the best players in it. I was in it in multiple times, like of its iterations, and they dominated every single time the guild was created. And the only reason that I put it above Crit Squad, I say it feel like Shattered Chaos and Crit Squad are like one and the same. They're like yin and yang, but Crit Squad had more iterations, and it wasn't disbanded by a very angry 13-year-old, because Shattered Chaos ended up getting disbanded by GameBuster 101 for no reason. But yeah, Crit Squad was just an astounding guild. It had an amazing roster, and it was just really all together just kind of like the perfect Blitz guild. Every Blitz guild we know today is basically based off of like Team Rec's design and Crit Squad's design, and Crit Squad was based off of Team Rec. Anyways, that was the Blitz guild tier list. I'm sorry if the descriptions of each tier from like F, E, D, and C weren't as great as you wanted them to be, but I'm pretty sure I did an astounding job explaining, like, you know, from like C tier all the way up to S tier. You know, I'm pretty sure I did an all right job. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like and a comment of your greatest experience in a Blitz guild. Let me know what you think of my tier list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What guilds were your favorite on this list? How many of these guilds were you in? You know, just talk about guilds in the comment section. That's pretty much the theme. That's what I'm asking of you guys. Leave a comment about a guild. Don't just throw in a random comment. You know, don't do that. Come on. Let's have a conversation. Let's do this. But anyway, guys, there's my tier list video for this month. There'll be one next month, I promise. I always do these. But yeah, love you guys. Peace out.